Now, it comes to no surprise to anybody that I'm quite a gas blowback orientated channel and business. I really think this is sort of the best part of Airsoft. It stays in tune with the realism, but it's really fun, it feels tactile, it just feels the way things should. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm quite up to date and very intrigued on how maintenance is done. Gas rifles can actually go a really long time without being maintained, but it's important that you do it well. I typically maintain my GBBRs every other game day, and even then that can be slightly overkill. But I thought I'd make a video on how I generally go about maintaining my riffs and give you a sort of guide on how you could do it really with any GBBR if you look at the bigger picture. Now I'll be doing something called a field strip, which is what is referred to in the real world. And this is a very basic breakdown of a rifle. I'll do a full video on a full breakdown of the VFC AR and eventually an MWS. And that way we can see how to clean it extensively. But for now I'm going to show you what I would do before any game day, and it will carry you a long way before you need to do a very thorough clean. So this is my VFC M733. I absolutely love this gun. It's fantastic and it's an absolute workhorse, but it definitely needs a clean. You can tell I really use this because my dust cover latch flew off. Anyway, I'm going to show you a very basic clean. In this video I will not be covering how we clean the hop-up and how I swab my inner barrel. I'm going to do that as a completely separate video. That way it'll be really easy and anybody who runs any type of airsoft gun can do it on their own. I will also do the same on magazines. So this video will only really cover the AR style of gas blowbacks. However, you can apply this knowledge to the vast majority of gas platforms, from pistols to AKs. You know, the terms are very similar. So to start with, let's take out the magazine. Then we will pop out the rear pin and separate our receivers on the pivot of the front pin. And from here we can pull out the bolt and the charging handle. And what we'll do is we'll put the whole gun aside and we'll start with these. And I'm going to zoom in for this. And here we have them. They're definitely a bit gunky and quite worn in. And so I'm going to show you how we just clean off this excess. You can see it's already getting on me. So for this I use a paper towel. You can use a cloth. The cloth has good merit too, but I just have paper towel, and as long as it comes off it's all the same. So all we're doing is just wiping off the general excess. One thing I'll say is try and keep from wiping any grease into the front of the nozzle. You're going to want to keep this free from any grease or lubrication, otherwise it could get into your hop chamber and that'll give you massive hop problems, and that would be a big headache. Just try and get into all the usual places where wear will be. You can see where the rifle wears most by these marks, so that makes life very easy. It'll also help when it comes to lubrication later. Cool, that's the bolt done, and we'll just do a quick bit of the charging handle. More or less close enough, really. So now we come to applying grease, and what grease or maintenance product you use is very personal. After being in this business for a few years, there's quite a lot of preference about what people prefer. You know, there's silicon, there's white lithium, and there's PTFE. I sort of lean towards more silicon and PTFE. They all have their own merits and their own advantages and disadvantages, but so far I've not come into any significant headaches when it comes to PTFE grease. So that's what I have here. This is my new PTFE grease that I brought out a few weeks ago. It tells you exactly where you should be using it, so if you're ever not sure, that'll work. Alternatively, there is things like Super Lube, which you can find on Amazon, but it will be more expensive than this, and I also offer discounts of this on my store, depending on what you pair it with. So there'll be links below for that. And if we open it up here, it's very pink, and this just helps me know where it's being applied. Another helpful tip, I use paintbrushes. Paintbrushes are really helpful for applying grease in very specific areas, maybe areas that are hard to reach. You can be just a bit more precise with it. You don't have to do this, but it's nice. And Remember, with maintenance products, especially like PTFE, a little goes a long way. Now, my PTFE, unlike some sort of others like Superlube, is quite a bit thinner, and the advantage of this is that it's less chance of it gunking up and getting really thick in your gun. It's going to glide just a little better, and it won't thicken up. And other people are reporting the same. Saying that, I'm laying this on quite heavily now, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to sort of use this part as my painting palette so I can spread the rest around. So again, just all on these contact surfaces here, do a little bit more. And this part here is where you're really going to want to make sure you have some, because it's where the hammer of the lower receiver touches the bolt, and there's a lot of friction going on there. I'd also advise keeping grease away from this port that touches your magazine gas routers, just because I do worry about lube being pushed up in there, firing out your nozzle and down your barrel. Brilliant, that will do for me. This is actually quite a lot more than I would usually do, but if you feel the need, you can just dab it off. And this will be a process where you learn how much you think you need, depending on your maintenance product and how often you're playing. So we'll put this to one side and we'll come into installing that later, and we'll carry on with the charging handle. Now for the charging handle, I usually do this underside here. This is where the gas key from your bolt will be sliding in and out of, and it's also a good idea to do a bit of the top here, as that will be touching your receiver. So there's definitely a bit of friction going on here. I can see the paint's actually coming off a little bit. And I'm going to put this to one side too, and I'm going to bring back up the rifle to show you something that I usually do with my upper receiver. So back here on the upper, I'm going to actually separate it from the lower by popping out this pin. And I'll put the lower somewhere else. And so I like to clean the dirt out from inside this channel. Quite a lot builds up in there, and it's mainly because, where we've just put our grease, there's a lot of friction going on here. Now this is an awkward area to get to, so what I do sometimes is I put in some tissue paper here. I grab the other end of my brush and I just brush it, and I just push it back and forth and get the majority of the excess up. I also make sure to keep it away from the hop chamber so I don't push anything in there. There you can see, definitely got quite a bit up there. I'm happy with that, so we can go ahead and put the bolt and charging handle back in. So charging handle first, and then the bolt. Brilliant, and that's the upper done now for our basic field strip maintenance. And so now we move to our lower assembly, and this one is pretty easy. There's one sort of like hidden little tip thing I do that a lot of people will sort of forget, but otherwise it's fairly simple. So I'm going to tear off a new bit of paper towel, as my last one's getting pretty gross now. So now I'm just going to wipe down my hammer area and a bit on the buffer there as well. I get a bit off the knocker valve system here, and maybe even a little bit in the magwell, because believe it or not, there's actually quite a lot of dirt and debris here from the friction of the magazine going in. Brilliant, and for now that will honestly do. The next thing I want to do is actually take out the recoil spring. So to do that, you have to depress a tiny little button here, and that will, if you're not careful, fire out your buffer. There we go. And then I take off my buffer, which doesn't look too bad, but we'll wipe that down too in a sec. And then we take out the recoil spring. Your recoil spring should actually be greased somewhat. So let's just wipe off the grease first. That's already on here because it's been doing an awful lot lately. I'm testing a lot of new products at the minute, and consequently that means I'm going through a lot of rounds on this gun, and so it is definitely getting quite covered. This spring used to be a very shiny blue. This is actually one of our VFC winter springs. It gives much better performance in warmer and colder temperatures, and it still keeps it snappy. And there's a link for those on my store too. And we'll also just polish off anything on our buffer as well. So why do we grease the buffer spring? And that's because this is usually the root cause of any twanging sound you get with your rifle. This is a common complaint I see by a lot of airsofters, saying my recoil spring makes my rifle sound twangy when I shoot it. And really one of the simplest fixes is just to put a little bit of grease on it. It stops it wobbling and it just prevents that sound from happening. This can be something that's a little tricky to do because you're not going to grease every single coil here. We're just going to do a little bit of a general thing, just like this. Brilliant. And what I'm also going to do is apply some grease to our buffer. And then I also like to do some on the front face where the bolt will make contact with it. And really, that is it. It's incredibly easy. And when we put this back together, you keep this big coiled end at the back and this wider end at the front. You can actually wipe down the grease on the inside of your buffer tube. I honestly don't feel the need for this, but if it's something you feel like you want to do, you can. I'd probably do it if I was doing a full deep clean, but for now, I'm not too worried. So let's get our buffer spring back in there. There we go, locked in. And now we're just going to apply some very basic grease to the top of the hammer here and just get it around into this section here too, just in front of it near the valve lock system. This will be it. It is fantastically simple, very easy, and it's a very good habit. This is a good thing you should be doing. You will notice that your gun feels a lot smoother once you've done this, and it just feels happier. It just feels like it should be done this way. Cool, so now we can do our full assembly. There we have it. That's a very basic field strip guide, I guess you could call it. It will feel much smoother now, and your rifle will be much happier for it. Of course, doing this cleaning and not keeping grit in there will also maintain the life of it. Keeping grit in there is just going to cause unnecessary friction. It can create loose fitment and all sorts of other issues. But for now, this is a very sort of basic clean that I do. I'll do a full clean later, and I'll make a video on that, but that will take much longer. And I think for sort of every other skirmish, this will do. I only really do the full clean sort of every few months, maybe every 6 months, twice a year. Yes, it definitely sounds a lot smoother. So I hope this video was helpful to you. It's a very simple, quick one. I'm sure there'll be people who say, you know, this could be a little bit more comprehensive, there could be a few more steps, and maybe things were maybe a little too simple, but honestly I think for just your average clean, this is more than satisfactory. Sure, there's maybe a little more you could do on a longer term, but I think for just your average game day with your GBBR, this will absolutely do. If you need any maintenance products like PTFE grease or silicone lube, these are sold in my store. I do bundle deals, so if you buy a selection of them, you get a good hearty discount. They're down in the links below. And I should be doing some more videos when it comes to breaking down some parts and installing some new things, so they'll be coming fairly soon. I'm actually going to film them the same day as today. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the full clean down.